He tore up her check, in front of everyone, not knowing it was worth $20 million. Victor laughed. Then he tore up the check. Right there, in front of everyone. The restaurant went silent. No plates clinked. No voices. No movement. Just a waitress, standing frozen, holding what was left of her future. Victor thought it was nothing. A stupid mistake. A fake check. A desperate lie. He had no idea that the paper he destroyed was worth $20 million. And he definitely didn't know. The old man watching from the corner booth was the one who wrote it. Lena had walked into that shift, worried about $43 in tips. By the end of the night, money would no longer be her problem. But what happened next would cost Victor everything.
Welcome to Quiet Hand Stories, where silence speaks, power hides, and one moment can change everything. While you're here, gently like the video, share it with someone who loves meaningful stories, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from.
The check hit the floor in two pieces. $20 million. Torn clean through the middle, fluttering down like worthless confetti onto the sticky restaurant tiles. Lena watched it fall, her face completely still, while Victor's laughter echoed through the dining room and every eye in the place locked onto her humiliation. But before that night, you need to understand who Lena was. Let's rewind to where this really started. 6 hours earlier, when Lena Martinez clocked in for another night shift at Belmont Steakhouse, already exhausted. Before her apron was even tied, the kitchen doors swung open with their familiar screech. Lena stepped through into the pre-dinner chaos, the smell of searing meat and garlic butter thick enough to choke on. Her feet ached before she'd taken 10 steps. Third double shift this week. Her uniform was crisp though, perfectly pressed, because that was the one thing Victor couldn't criticize her for, and God knows he looked for reasons. Lena didn't know it yet, but this shift would be the last time she ever worked for tips. And Victor had no idea he was about to make the most expensive mistake of his life. You're 4 minutes late. Victor's voice cut through the kitchen noise like a knife through butter. He stood by the expo station, arms crossed, that expression on his face that she'd come to know too well. The one that said he'd been waiting specifically for her to arrive, so he could start the night off by making her feel small. Lena glanced at the clock. 6:56. Her shift started at 7. I'm early, actually, she said quietly, reaching for her order pad. Victor stepped closer. He was a tall man, mid-40s, with the kind of swagger that came from never being challenged. When I tell you to be here at 6:30 for prep, and you show up at 6:56, that's late. That's disrespectful to me and this establishment. He'd never told her 6:30. They both knew it. But contradicting him would only make things worse. So Lena just nodded and moved toward her section. Table 12 needs water, Victor called after her. They've been waiting. Table 12 wasn't even in her section. It was in Brandon's, but Brandon was leaning against the bar flirting with the hostess, and Victor never seemed to notice when Brandon did things like that. Only when Lena took a 30-second breather. She filled the water pitcher and headed to table 12. The couple there didn't look up when she poured. Didn't say thank you. She'd become invisible over the past 8 months working here. The waitress who moved through the restaurant like a ghost, doing her job without complaint, without making waves, without being seen. That was fine by her. Being invisible meant less conflict, less attention, less chance of things going wrong. The Friday dinner rush hit like a freight train around 7:30. Every table full, kitchen backed up, customers getting impatient. Lena moved efficiently through her section, taking orders, delivering food, clearing plates. She was good at this work. Fast, accurate, polite. The customers tipped decently when they remembered she existed. Lena. Victor's voice boomed from across the dining room. Several diners looked up. Table 7 says they've been waiting 20 minutes for their appetizers. What's the holdup? She'd put that order in 23 minutes ago. She'd checked on it twice. The kitchen was slammed and running behind on everything. I'll check with the kitchen right now, Lena said, already moving. Don't check with the kitchen. Go to table 7 and apologize for the delay. Tell them their appetizers are coming out immediately and their entrees are on the house. Her stomach dropped. Comping entrees came out of the server's tips. She'd lose $40, maybe more, because the kitchen was behind. Victor, I put the order in on time. The kitchen is just backed up tonight because... Are you arguing with me? He said it loud enough that nearby tables could definitely hear. A woman in a red dress glanced over, curious. Are you really standing here arguing with me instead of taking care of our guests? Heat crept up Lena's neck. Every server in the restaurant was dealing with the same kitchen delays, but somehow she was the only one getting called out. She swallowed the unfairness of it, the way she'd learned to swallow a lot of things. I'll take care of it right now. She apologized to table 7. They were nice about it. Actually, said they understood, but Victor had already decided their meals were comped, so that was that. $43 gone from her night's earnings. Money she needed for rent that was already 5 days late. By 9 o'clock, her feet were screaming and her lower back had that deep ache that meant she'd be hurting for days. She allowed herself a 20-second break by the service station, rolling her shoulders, pressing her fingers into the small of her back. Rough night. Jennifer, another server, grabbed a stack of napkins from the shelf. She was one of the few people here who talked to Lena like a human being. Just tired. Victor's being extra awful to you today. What's his problem? Lena shrugged. She'd stopped trying to figure out what Victor's problem was. Some people just enjoyed having someone to look down on. She'd learned that early in life, learned it the hard way. Hey, I heard table 18 asking for you specifically, Jennifer said. Old guy in the corner booth. Said he wanted the waitress with the kind face. That's sweet. Table 18 was technically Marcus's table, but Marcus waved her over when she glanced his way. All yours. Guy barely ordered anything anyway. Not worth my time. The booth in the far corner was dim, tucked away from the main dining room bustle. The man sitting there was elderly, maybe 70, with deep lines around his eyes and gray hair that looked like it had been cut at home. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of worn that comes from years of use, not fashion. A simple jacket, flannel shirt, old jeans. He looked up when Lena approached, and something in his expression made her pause. His eyes were sharp, alert, studying her with an intensity that felt unusual. Good evening, Lena said, falling into her service voice automatically. I'm Lena. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Lena, he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. That's a strong name. Thank you. Can I start you off with something to drink? Just water, please. And I'll have the grilled chicken, no sides. She wrote it down, but hesitated. No sides at all. We have. Just the chicken is fine. He smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes. I'm not very hungry. Long day. I understand those. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She wasn't supposed to make personal comments to customers. Victor had a rule about that too. The old man's smile widened slightly. I imagine you do. You've been on your feet since 7, haven't you? Lena blinked, surprised. How did you know that? I've been here for a while. Came in earlier, sat at the bar for a bit. I watched you working. He paused, his gaze steady. You move like someone who's carrying more than just plates. Something about the way he said it made Lena's chest tighten. She wasn't used to being seen, really seen, by customers. Most looked through her like she was part of the furniture. I'll get your water and put this order in, she said, deflecting. No rush. His voice was calm, unhurried. I'm in no hurry tonight. When Lena returned with his water, the dining room had thinned out slightly. The post-dinner lull before the late-night bar crowd filtered in. She set the glass down carefully. Thank you, Lena. He said her name again, deliberately. Can I ask you something? She should have said no. Should have politely excused herself. But something in his tone made her stay. Sure. How long have you worked here? 8 months. And before that? The question was gentle, but it touched on places she didn't talk about. Different restaurants. I've been in service work for a while. That's not what I meant. He took a sip of water, watching her over the rim of the glass. I meant before the restaurants. Before this version of your life. Lena's hand tightened on her order pad. I should check on your food. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I didn't mean to pry. It's just that I'm good at reading people, and you strike me as someone who's had to start over. Maybe more than once. She should have walked away. Instead, she heard herself saying, 3 times. I've started over 3 times. He nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd already suspected. That takes strength. Most people don't survive one reinvention, let alone 3. I don't know about strength, Lena said quietly. Sometimes you just do what you have to do. That's exactly what strength is. He leaned back in the booth. Doing what you have to do when everything in you wants to give up. When the world tells you you're not worth the effort. When people treat you like you're invisible. Lena's throat felt tight. She didn't know who this man was, but he was saying things that felt like he'd reached into her chest and pulled out thoughts she'd never spoken aloud. Your chicken should be ready soon, she managed. Lena, he said it softly. Can I tell you something? You don't have to respond. Just listen. She waited. I've learned over the years that how someone treats people who can do nothing for them reveals everything about their character. You've been nothing but kind and professional to me, even though I'm just an old man ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. That says more about who you are than any resume or title ever could. Before Lena could respond, Victor's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Lena, what are you doing? She turned to find him striding across the dining room. His face already set in that expression of controlled anger he wore when he wanted to make a scene without looking like he was making a scene. I'm taking care of my table, Lena said evenly. Taking care of your table? You've been standing here chatting for 5 minutes. We have customers who need service. It had been maybe 90 seconds, but arguing about it would only make things worse. I'll check on the other tables right now. This isn't your table anyway, Victor said, looking at the old man with barely concealed disdain. This is Marcus's section. Marcus handles this area. Marcus told me to take it, Lena explained. I don't care what Marcus said. I'm telling you to focus on your own section and stop wasting time. He turned to the old man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I apologize for the confusion, sir. We'll have your food out shortly. The old man's expression hadn't changed, but something flickered in his eyes as he looked at Victor. The confusion is mine. I specifically asked for Lena to serve me. She's been wonderful. Victor's jaw tightened. Well, she has other tables to attend to. I'm sure Marcus can. I'd prefer Lena. The old man's voice remained gentle, but there was steel underneath it now. If that's not possible, I can certainly take my business elsewhere. For a moment, Victor looked like he wanted to argue. But losing a customer, even one who'd only ordered chicken and water, would look bad. Of course, sir. Lena will take excellent care of you. The second Victor walked away, Lena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. I'm sorry about that, she said quietly. Why are you apologizing? You did nothing wrong. He's my manager. I should have been more aware of the time. Lena. The old man's voice was firm now. That man treated you with disrespect in front of a customer. That's not about time management. That's about power and how he chooses to wield it. She didn't know what to say to that. It was true, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel more real, more painful somehow. I'll get your food, she said. The chicken came out 10 minutes later. Lena set it down carefully, along with fresh napkins and silverware. The old man thanked her, but didn't start eating right away. Can I ask you one more question? He said. Lena glanced toward the kitchen, making sure Victor wasn't watching. Okay. If you could do anything, be anything, what would it be? The question caught her completely off guard. No one had asked her that in years. Maybe ever. I don't know. Yes, you do. You're just afraid to say it out loud. Lena felt something crack open inside her chest, some carefully maintained wall she'd built to keep herself safe. I used to think I'd go back to school, get a degree in social work, help kids who are going through what I went through. But that was a long time ago. Now I just focus on getting through each day. Why can't you still do that? Because it costs money. Because I'm barely keeping my head above water as it is. Because people like me don't get those kinds of second chances. People like you, he repeated quietly. You mean people who've had hard lives? People who've made mistakes? People who've had to start over? Yes. Lena, those are exactly the people who should be helping others. They're the ones who understand what rock bottom looks like. They're the ones with real empathy, real compassion. He finally picked up his fork, but his eyes stayed on her. Don't let your circumstances convince you that your dreams are impossible. Sometimes all we need is one opportunity, one person who believes we're worth investing in. Lena felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes and blinked them back quickly. She couldn't cry in the middle of the dining room. I should let you eat. Thank you, Lena. For the conversation and for being exactly who you are. She moved through the rest of her shift in a daze, the old man's words echoing in her head. No customer had ever talked to her like that, seen her like that. It felt dangerous somehow, like caring about what he'd said would only lead to disappointment when reality inevitably crushed those fragile hopes back down. By 10:30, the restaurant had mostly cleared out. Just a few stragglers at the bar, a couple finishing dessert near the window, and the old man still sitting quietly in his corner booth. He'd finished his chicken an hour ago, but showed no signs of leaving. Just sat there with his empty plate, occasionally sipping water, watching the restaurant with those sharp, thoughtful eyes. Lena had checked on him twice. Each time he'd smiled and said he was fine, just enjoying the atmosphere. It was strange, but harmless. Some people didn't like going home to empty houses. She understood that better than most. She was clearing table 6 when she heard Victor's voice rising near the host's stand. "I don't care what the system says, that's not possible. Run it again." Curious despite herself, Lena glanced over. Marcus was standing at the computer terminal, looking confused, while Victor leaned over his shoulder, jabbing a finger at the screen. "I'm telling you, it's what came up," Marcus said defensively. "I'm just reading what's here." "Well, it's wrong. Obviously it's wrong." Victor straightened up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Where's the customer now?" "Still here. Table 18. Lena's stomach dropped. "Table 18. The old man." She moved closer, trying to look busy while staying within earshot. Jennifer caught her eye from across the room and mouthed, "What's happening?" But Lena could only shrug. Victor grabbed a printed slip from the terminal and stormed across the dining room toward the corner booth. Lena followed at a distance, her heart beginning to pound for reasons she couldn't quite name. "Excuse me, sir." Victor's tone was all forced politeness now, the voice he used when he thought he was dealing with someone important. "There seems to be an issue with your payment method." The old man looked up calmly. "What kind of issue?" "Well, you provided a check for payment, which is unusual but not unheard of. However, when my staff attempted to verify the funds, the amount that came back is clearly an error in our system." "What amount came back?" Victor laughed, the sound sharp and uncomfortable. $20 million, sir. Obviously, that's a computer glitch. If you could provide an alternative payment method for your actual bill of $37.42, we can resolve this quickly." The old man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. "Simple, black, nothing fancy. The check is legitimate. The amount is correct." Victor's smile froze on his face. "I'm sorry, what?" $20 million. That's what I intended to leave for Lena. She'll need to verify the funds with her bank, of course, but everything is in order." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every person still inside was now watching the corner booth. Lena felt like the floor had dropped out from under her feet. "Sir, I think there's been some confusion," Victor said slowly, like he was talking to someone senile. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need me to call someone for you?" "I'm feeling perfectly well, thank you." The old man's voice remained steady, unbothered by Victor's condescension. "And there's no confusion. I'm a man of considerable means, and I've chosen to give a substantial gift to someone who demonstrated exceptional character and kindness. The check is real. The amount is correct. Lena can deposit it at any bank." Victor laughed again, louder this time. "Okay, this is ridiculous. Sir, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not a game." The old man stood slowly, reaching into his jacket again. He pulled out a leather wallet and from it extracted a business card, which he handed to Victor. Victor glanced at it, and Lena saw his face change. The color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back in an angry red flush. His hand holding the card began to tremble slightly. "This is fake," Victor said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "This has to be fake. Call the number if you'd like to verify. They're available 24 hours. The old man's tone was mild, almost friendly. "Or don't. It makes no difference to me. The check is Lena's now. What happens next is up to her." Lena found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "I don't understand what's happening." The old man turned to her, his expression softening. "I told you earlier that how we treat people who can do nothing for us reveals our character. You treated me with dignity and kindness when I was just an old man in worn clothes ordering the cheapest item on the menu. You listened when I spoke. You saw me as a human being, not a transaction. That's rarer than you might think, especially in my world. But $20 million. Lena couldn't even process the number. It was too big, too impossible. Is money I can afford to give to someone who will use it well. He smiled. Consider it an investment in your future, in that degree you want to earn, in helping those kids you mentioned, in building the life you deserve. Victor had been reading the business card over and over, his face cycling through disbelief, shock, and growing horror. This is really? Yes. The old man took the card back gently. And I believe Lena has a check to collect. He reached into his jacket one final time and pulled out a checkbook. Standard size, nothing flashy. He'd already filled it out, Lena realized. The date, the amount in numbers and words, his signature in neat, careful script. He'd done this before even ordering his food. Before their conversation. He'd planned this from the moment he walked in. He held it out to her. Lena stared at it, her hand frozen at her side. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. There had to be a catch, a hidden camera, some cruel joke about to be revealed. Take it, the old man said gently. You've earned it in ways that have nothing to do with tonight. You've earned it by surviving, by staying kind when the world gave you every reason to become bitter, by helping others even when you had nothing yourself, by getting back up every single time you were knocked down. Her hand moved without conscious thought, reaching out, fingers closing around the paper. It felt real, solid. The ink was slightly raised where he'd pressed hard with the pen. If the check was real, nothing would ever be the same again. $20 million. Made out to Lena Marie Martinez. Signed by someone whose name she recognized now that she was really looking at it. A name everyone would recognize. A man who owned half the commercial real estate in the state, whose foundation funded hospitals and schools, who'd been on the cover of Forbes 3 times in the last 5 years. This can't be real, she whispered. It is. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, just for a moment. Use it wisely. Use it well. And when you've built that life you dreamed about, remember this feeling and pass it forward. Someone else out there is waiting for their chance, their moment of hope. Be that person for them. Tears were streaming down Lena's face now, and she didn't care. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Live well. That's all the thanks I need. Victor's face had gone from confusion to something darker. His eyes locked onto the check in Lena's trembling hands. Give me that check. Now. He wasn't asking anymore. It's mine, Lena said, pulling it closer to her chest. He gave it to me. You actually believe this is real? Victor laughed, loud and harsh. You think some old man in thrift store clothes just handed you $20 million? You're dumber than I thought. He lunged forward and snatched the check from her hands before she could react. Lena gasped. Give it back. This is obviously fake. Victor held it up, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny while the entire restaurant watched in stunned silence. Probably downloaded the template online. You really thought you could scam us. That check is legitimate, the old man said quietly, standing up from the booth. And you need to return it to her immediately. Or what? Victor sneered. He looked at the check one more time, then at Lena's face, and something vicious crossed his expression. You know what? I'm done with this circus. He gripped the check with both hands. Don't, Lena started. Victor tore it in half. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silent restaurant. $20 million, ripped clean through the middle. The 2 pieces fluttered from his hands onto the sticky restaurant floor. Lena stared at the torn paper, her face completely still. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. There, Victor said, dusting his hands off dramatically. Problem solved. Now get back to work, or you just made the biggest mistake of your career. The old man's voice cut through the room like ice. Victor turned, his confident smile still in place. Really? And what are you going to do about it, old man? Sue me for destroying fake money. The old man reached calmly into his jacket and pulled out his checkbook. The real kind, leather-bound, with his name embossed in gold on the cover. He clicked open a pen and began writing. What are you doing? Victor asked, his smile faltering. Writing another check. The old man didn't look up, his hand moving steadily across the paper. Same amount. Same recipient. You can tear up as many as you'd like. I have plenty more. He signed with a flourish, tore the check from the book, and handed it to Lena. Her hands were shaking so badly, she almost dropped it. But this time, the old man continued, his eyes fixed on Victor. I'm also writing down exactly what happened here tonight. The witness names, the time, the date, your full name and position. He pulled out his phone. And I'm recording this conversation, which I'll be forwarding to my legal team and to the actual owner of this restaurant chain. Victor's face drained of color. The actual owner? Yes. The old man's voice was pleasant, almost friendly. I have connections with who own all 47 Belmont Steakhouse locations, including this one, including your job. You're making a serious mistake, the old man added quietly. The only mistake was made by whoever thought giving a nobody waitress $20 million was a good idea. Victor began dialing. This whole thing is obviously a scam, and I'm not going to let it play out in my restaurant. Jennifer stepped forward from near the bar. Victor, this is crazy. Just let her go. Stay out of this, Jennifer, unless you want to be fired too. Fired? You can't fire Lena for accepting a gift from a customer. I can fire her for insubordination, for creating a disturbance, for any number of reasons. Victor kept his eyes on Lena. Last chance. Hand over the check. Lena looked down at the paper in her hands. $20 million. A future. A way out. Everything she'd dreamed about and stopped letting herself hope for. And Victor wanted her to just give it away because he couldn't stand seeing someone beneath him rise above their station. Something hardened in her chest. Something that had been soft and bendable for too long. No, she said again, clearer this time. This is mine. He gave it to me, and you have no right to take it. Victor's thumb hovered over his phone screen. Then I'm calling the police right now. Please do, the old man said. Call them. I welcome the opportunity to explain to law enforcement how you're attempting to intimidate and coerce an employee into surrendering property that legally belongs to her. I'm sure they'll be fascinated by your methods. Victor hesitated. Something in the old man's tone, in his absolute confidence, made him pause. While you're at it, the old man continued, you might also explain why you've been harassing this young woman for months. Why you publicly humiliated her earlier this evening over kitchen delays you knew weren't her responsibility. I'm sure the labor board would be interested in those details as well. I don't know who you think you are, Victor said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. I know exactly who I am. The question is whether you know who you're dealing with. The old man pulled out his phone, moved with surprising speed for someone his age. I can have my lawyers here in 15 minutes. I can have the actual owner of this restaurant chain on the phone in 5. Or you can step aside and let us leave peacefully. Your choice. The standoff stretched out, tense and brittle. Lena could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She watched Victor's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Pride warring with self-preservation. Finally, Victor stepped aside, but his expression was venomous. Fine. Go. But Lena, you're fired. Effective immediately. Don't bother coming back. This was the moment Lena stopped surviving and started fighting back. Don't bother coming back for what, exactly? Lena heard herself say. The words came from somewhere deep, some part of her that had been silent for too long. For minimum wage? For your insults? For the privilege of being blamed for things I didn't do? Victor blinked, clearly not expecting a response. And that's when the entire restaurant went silent. You think firing me matters right now? Lena continued, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. You think I care about losing this job where you've made every single shift miserable? Where you've gone out of your way to make me feel worthless? Lena, I wouldn't, Victor started, glancing around at the watching staff. You tore up my tips tonight. $43 because the kitchen was running behind. You know how much $43 means to someone like me? That's groceries. That's my electric bill. But you didn't care because making your point was more important than my ability to keep my lights on. Jennifer was nodding. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but didn't disagree. Even the line cooks were watching with expressions that suggested they'd seen this before, suffered under it themselves. "You're being dramatic," Victor said, but he'd taken another step back. "I run this restaurant by the book. Everything I do is by the book." "The book didn't tell you to humiliate me in front of customers," Lena said. "The book didn't tell you to assign me only the worst tables, the ones where people don't tip. The book didn't tell you to schedule me for every holiday, every double shift, every slot nobody else wanted. If you had a problem with your treatment, you should have filed a complaint through proper channels." "To who?" "You. You're the manager. You are the channel." Lena felt something breaking open inside her, years of swallowed words finally finding their way out. "You made sure I knew that questioning you meant losing my job. And I needed this job, no matter how terrible it was, because I have rent to pay and a record that makes finding work almost impossible." She saw the old man watching her with something that might have been approval, but she couldn't stop now even if she wanted to. "So yes, Victor, fire me. Put it in writing if you want. But we both know you're not firing me for insubordination or creating a disturbance. You're firing me because for the first time in 8 months, something good happened to me and you can't stand it. You can't stand seeing someone you've worked so hard to keep down finally get a chance to rise up." The silence that followed was absolute. Victor's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His face had gone from purple back to red, then to an odd grayish color. "I think we're done here," the old man said quietly. He gestured toward the exit. "Lena." She moved toward the door, still clutching the check. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her heart was still pounding, but it felt different now. Not panic. Something else. Something that felt almost like freedom. "Wait," Victor said. His voice had changed, gone careful and calculated. "Lena, wait. Let's not be hasty here." She turned back. "I think we both said things we didn't mean," Victor continued, his tone shifting toward something meant to sound reasonable. "It's been a long night. Emotions are running high. Why don't you take the weekend to think things over? Come back Monday. We can discuss this calmly." "Discuss what?" Lena asked. "Your future here. Your concerns. I'm always open to feedback from my staff." He spread his hands in a gesture of openness that looked practiced. "And if that check turns out to be real, well, that's wonderful for you. But you might still want to keep your job here, right? Keep your options open while you figure out what to do next." Lena understood what was happening. He'd seen her defiance, seen the old man's support, done the math on what could happen if she filed complaints or lawsuits. Now he was backpedaling, trying to smooth things over before they escalated beyond his control. "No," she said simply. "No." Victor's smile faltered. "I don't want to discuss my future here because I don't have one here. You fired me, remember? And even if you hadn't, I wouldn't come back. Not for any amount of money. Some things aren't worth the cost." She turned and walked toward the door. The old man fell into step beside her. Behind them, she heard Victor call out one more time. "That check is fake, Lena. You're going to figure that out and come crawling back here begging for your job, and I'm going to laugh in your face." The old man paused at the door, looked back. "I've been writing checks for 40 years. Never bounced a single one. But please, do call the police if you'd like verification. I'll wait." He handed Victor another business card. "My personal cell number is on the back. Feel free to use it once you've realized the magnitude of your mistake." Then they stepped outside in the cool night air. Freedom felt terrifying when she finally touched it. Lena stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, her apron still tied around her waist. The check was crumpled slightly from how tightly she'd been gripping it. "That was well done," the old man said. Lena laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. "I just burned every bridge I had. You cut ties with an anchor that was dragging you down. That's different. What if the check isn't real? What if this is all some elaborate?" "The check is real, Lena. I promise you that." He pulled out his wallet again, extracted several $100 bills. "But it will take a few days to clear. In the meantime, take this. Tide yourself over." She stared at the money. "I can't." "You can and you will. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. Pay me back once the check clears." He pressed the bills into her hand. "Go home. Get some rest. Monday morning, go to your bank and deposit the check. They'll verify the funds. And then, Lena, your new life begins." Tears were streaming down her face again. "Why me? Why did you do this?" Because I was you once, he said quietly. 45 years ago, I was a kid sleeping in my car, working 3 jobs, convinced I'd never amount to anything. Someone took a chance on me, gave me an opportunity one hadn't earned, didn't deserve, couldn't repay. They told me the same thing I'm telling you now. Use it well, and when the time comes, pass it forward. He started walking toward a car parked down the street, a modest sedan that didn't match the check he'd just written. Wait, Lena called. I don't even know how to contact you. How do I thank you? How do I update you on what I do with this? He smiled over his shoulder. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful. You've had to be. He opened his car door, paused. One more thing, Lena. That strength you showed in there tonight, standing up to that bully, don't lose that. You're going to need it in the days ahead. People will question you, doubt you, try to convince you that you don't deserve this. Don't let them make you small again. Then he was gone, the sedan pulling away into the night, leaving Lena standing alone on an empty sidewalk with a $20 million check and no idea what came next. She looked down at the crumpled paper in her hand. The amount seemed even more impossible now, the zeros stretching out in a line that her brain couldn't quite process. This had to be a dream. Any moment, she'd wake up in her tiny apartment, late for her shift, scrambling to get ready before Victor found another reason to dock her pay. But the check felt real. The bills in her other hand felt real. The cool night air on her face felt real. Lena untied her apron slowly, folded it carefully despite everything. Force of habit. Then she dropped it in the trash can outside the restaurant. She wouldn't be needing it anymore. The walk home took 30 minutes. She lived in a rundown complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where the locks barely worked and the neighbors minded their own business because everyone had something they didn't want examined too closely. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a hallway that always smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, locked it behind her. The space was tiny, a studio, barely 400 square feet, but it was hers, and she'd kept it clean, organized. A small couch that folded out into a bed. Miracles are loud at first, and terrifying when the noise fades. Lena sat on the edge of her fold-out couch and stared at the check under the harsh light of her single lamp. The signature was real. The routing numbers looked legitimate. The paper had weight to it, the kind of quality you didn't find in forgeries. But doubt crept in anyway, insidious and familiar. This was too much, too fast, too impossible. People like her didn't get miracles. They got hard work and disappointment and the occasional small victory that felt huge only because the bar had been set so devastatingly low. She thought about Victor's parting words. You're going to come crawling back here begging for your job. What if he was right? What if she showed up at the bank Monday morning and they laughed her out of the building? What if this was some kind of sick social experiment? Hidden cameras catching her hope and humiliation for entertainment. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Girl, what just happened? Are you okay? Is that check real? Lena stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. I don't know. I think so. Maybe. 3 dots appeared immediately, Jennifer typing. Victor is losing his mind. He called the owner. He's trying to verify who that old man was. Everyone's talking about it. Another message came through. Marcus said he recognized the name on the business card. Said it's that billionaire who owns the Belmont chain. Said it might actually be real. Lena's hands started shaking again. She set the phone down, pressed her palms against her knees. The Belmont chain. The restaurant she'd been working at was called Belmont Steakhouse. She'd never thought about who owned it, had assumed it was some faceless corporation somewhere. Her phone buzzed again. Jennifer. Victor just left. Locked himself in the office first, made some calls. Came out looking like he'd seen a ghost. Lena, I think it's real. I think that check is actually real. Lena couldn't breathe. The walls of her tiny apartment felt like they were closing in. She stood up, paced the small space, 6 steps from one end to the other. The money the old man had given her lay on the counter. $700 bills. More cash than she'd held at one time in years. She thought about what he'd said. Your new life begins. But what did that even mean? She'd spent so long in survival mode that she'd forgotten how to imagine anything beyond it. Getting through the day, making rent, keeping her head down. Those had been her goals for so long that the idea of something bigger, something more, felt abstract and unreachable. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and disbelief. Lena barely slept. She kept the check on her bedside table, checking it every few hours to make sure it was still there. Still real. Saturday morning, she walked to the library and used their computers to search for the old man's name. Articles appeared by the dozen. Business profiles, philanthropic endeavors, real estate acquisitions. Net worth estimated at over $4 billion. Photos showed a man who looked decades younger than the person she'd served, but the eyes were the same. Sharp, intelligent, seeing. One article from 3 years ago caught her attention. An interview where he discussed his philosophy on wealth and giving. Money is just a tool, he'd said. The question is what you build with it. I've learned that the best investments aren't in buildings or stocks. They're in people. Find someone with character and potential, give them a real chance, and step back. You'd be amazed what happens. Lena read that paragraph 5 times, tears blurring her vision. Sunday evening, she laid out clothes for Monday. The nicest outfit she owned, which wasn't saying much. Black slacks with a small stain on one leg that she'd tried and failed to remove. A white blouse that had been washed so many times the collar was starting to fray. But they were clean and pressed. And they'd have to do. She barely slept Sunday night. By the time her alarm went off at 6 a.m., she'd been awake for hours, watching the sky lighten outside her window. The bank opened at 9. Lena arrived at 8:30 and waited in her car, a 20-year-old Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. She watched other customers arrive, normal people doing normal banking, depositing paychecks, withdrawing cash, dealing with the mundane financial transactions that kept life moving forward. At exactly 9 o'clock, she walked through the doors. This door separated fantasy from reality. The interior was all polished marble and soft lighting, designed to convey stability and trust. A young woman at the welcome desk smiled at her. "Good morning. How can we help you today? I need to make a deposit." Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "A large deposit. Of course. You can see one of our tellers, or if you prefer, I can set you up with a banking specialist." "A specialist, please." The woman's smile never wavered. "Absolutely. Can I ask the approximate amount we're dealing with? Just so I can direct you to the right person." Lena pulled the check from her purse, unfolded it carefully. $20 million. The smile froze. The woman's eyes dropped to the check, widened, then snapped back to Lena's face. For a moment, Lena saw the doubt there. The assumption that this was a joke or a mistake or something not quite legitimate. "I'll get our branch manager," the woman said, her tone suddenly very professional. "Please have a seat." Lena sat in one of the leather chairs in the waiting area and tried not to throw up. This was it. The moment where she'd find out if her life had actually changed or if she'd been living in a fantasy for 3 days. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Lena watched other customers come and go, conducting their business efficiently. A man deposited a stack of checks from his business. A woman withdrew cash for her grandson's birthday. Normal life, continuing normally. Ms. Martinez, a tall man in an expensive suit, approached, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm Richard Chun, the branch manager. Would you please come with me?" She followed him through the lobby to a private office in the back. Glass walls, but blinds for privacy. He closed the door, gestured to a chair. "May I see the check, please?" Lena handed it over, watching his face as he examined it. He studied the signature, the account numbers, the amount. Then he pulled out his phone and stepped away slightly, making a call in a voice too low for her to hear. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. Lena counted every second. The next words would change her life forever. When he turned back, his entire demeanor had changed. The professional distance had been replaced by something warmer, more genuine. "Ms. Martinez, I've just verified the check with the issuing bank. The funds are legitimate and available. This is a valid check for $20 million made payable to you." He paused. "This is quite extraordinary." Lena exhaled. Slowly. Her hands were shaking. But this time not from fear. Relief flooded her chest. Then, the branch manager hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough for doubt to crawl back in. "There is one more thing," he said carefully. Lena's stomach dropped, because every miracle she'd ever thought she had come with a catch. But this time, the catch wasn't bad news. She felt tears start to fall and didn't bother wiping them away. It's real. It's real, he confirmed, sitting down across from her. Now, let's talk about how you'd like to proceed. A deposit of this size requires some special handling. We'll need to set up appropriate accounts, discuss investment options, potentially bring in our wealth management team. The next 2 hours passed in a daze of paperwork and explanations. Account structures, tax implications, investment strategies. Richard was patient, explaining everything in terms she could understand, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. I'd also strongly recommend you consult with an attorney and a financial advisor, he said as they wrapped up. Independent ones, not affiliated with the bank. You want advocates who are working solely in your interest. I don't know any attorneys or financial advisors, Lena admitted. I can provide you with some referrals if you'd like. Reputable people. He slid a card across the desk. In the meantime, I'm setting up a checking account with $50,000 available immediately. The rest will be in secured accounts while you determine your long-term strategy. Does that work for you? $50,000 immediately available. Lena almost laughed. A week ago, she'd been stressed about $43 in lost tips. That works, she managed to say. One more thing, Richard said, his tone becoming more personal. I don't know the story behind this check, and you don't have to tell me. But I've been in banking for 20 years, and I can usually tell when someone's receiving money they earned versus money they lucked into versus money they inherited. You strike me as someone who earned this, even if the method was unconventional. Lena left the bank 3 hours later with a new debit card, a folder full of paperwork, and the surreal knowledge that her life had fundamentally changed. The morning sun felt different somehow, brighter and more real. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, just breathing, trying to process what had happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Richard Chun from the bank. Forgot to mention, the gentleman who wrote your check called this morning. Left a message for you. Said to tell you. Now comes the hard part. Don't waste it. Lena smiled through fresh tears. The hard part. He was right. Having money was one thing. Knowing what to do with it, how to honor the gift and the trust behind it, that was something else entirely. She drove back to her apartment and spent the afternoon making lists. Not of things to buy, though God knew there were things she needed, but lists of what mattered. Education, that social work degree she'd abandoned. A foundation, maybe, to help kids aging out of foster care, kids like she'd been. A place to live that didn't smell like mildew. Stability. Security. The chance to breathe without constantly calculating whether she could afford groceries and rent in the same week. Tuesday morning, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Martinez? This is David Belmont. The voice was warm, familiar. The old man. I hope I'm not calling too early. Mr. Belmont, Lena said, her voice catching. I deposited the check yesterday. It cleared. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. The way you treated me, the way you stood up to that manager, that was all the thanks I needed. He paused. The money wasn't the real reason he called. I am calling with a purpose. I want to offer you something else, if you're interested. You've already given me everything, Lena said. Not everything. Not yet. I want to offer you a job. Lena sat down hard on her couch. A job? I own the Belmont restaurant chain, as you've probably figured out by now. 47 locations across 6 states. And after what I witnessed Friday night, I've been doing some digging into how my managers operate. What I'm finding isn't pretty. His voice hardened slightly. Victor wasn't an isolated case. I've got managers across the chain who've been treating staff the same way. I need someone to help me fix that. Someone who understands what it's like on the ground, who won't accept excuses or empty promises. I don't understand, Lena said slowly. I want you to be my director of employee relations. You'd work directly with me, visit locations, interview staff, identify problems, and help implement solutions. You'd have real authority to make changes. And you'd be compensated appropriately, of course, though I imagine money is less of a concern for you now. Lena's mind raced. Mr. Belmont, I'm a waitress. I don't have a degree in human resources or management or anything like that. You have something better. You have experience. You know what it's like to be on the receiving end of bad management. You know what respect looks like and what abuse looks like. That's worth more than any degree. He paused. Think about it. You don't have to decide today, but I believe you could make a real difference, Lena. For people just like you. After they hung up, Lena sat in silence for a long time. Then she pulled out her laptop and started researching social work programs. If she was going to help people, she wanted to do it right. The degree she dreamed about was suddenly, impossibly within reach. Power had shifted, and Victor was on the wrong side of it. Wednesday afternoon, she got a call from Jennifer. You need to hear what happened, Jennifer said, her voice excited and slightly gleeful. Victor got fired. Lena's breath caught. What? The owner himself came in yesterday. Spent hours interviewing everyone on staff. Asked about Victor's management style, how he treated employees, everything. Then this morning, corporate shows up, walks Victor out. Just like that. Gone. Did they say why? They didn't have to. Everyone knows. Jennifer laughed. Marcus said the owner mentioned your name specifically. Said what happened to you was unacceptable and he was conducting a full review of all management practices. After Jennifer hung up, Lena thought about Victor. Part of her felt satisfaction, the natural human response to seeing someone who'd caused pain face consequences. But another part felt something more complex. Victor had been a bully, yes, but he'd also been a small person given a small amount of power who'd used it badly. The system had allowed it, encouraged it even. Punishing one manager wouldn't fix the larger problem. That's when she knew what her answer to Mr. Belmont would be. Thursday morning, she called him back. I'll take the job, but I want to go back to school too. Get that social work degree. I want to do both. Then you'll do both, he said simply. We'll make it work. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after the night that changed everything, Lena stood outside Belmont's steakhouse. She wasn't sure why she'd come back. Maybe for closure. Maybe to prove to herself it was real. The new manager was already in place, a woman named Sarah who greeted customers with genuine warmth. Through the windows, Lena could see Jennifer taking orders, Marcus running food, the kitchen staff working efficiently. Life went on. She didn't go inside. Instead, she stood on the sidewalk where she'd stood a week ago, remembering the fear and uncertainty and desperate hope. Remembering the old man's words, your new life begins. It had begun, but not just because of the money, Lena realized. It had begun the moment she'd chosen to stand up, to speak her truth, to stop making herself small to make others comfortable. The check had given her options, but the courage had been hers all along. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Belmont. Start Monday if you're ready. No pressure. Take the time you need. Lena smiled and typed back. I'm ready. She walked back to her car, but not to the beat-up Honda. Yesterday she'd bought something reliable, nothing flashy, just dependable. The kind of car that started every morning without drama. Tomorrow she was meeting with the admissions office at the state university. Next week she'd start her new job. The week after that, she'd begin looking for a real apartment, maybe even a small house. But tonight, she was going to do something she hadn't done in years. She was going to rest. Really rest. Without fear about money running out or jobs disappearing or the next crisis lurking around the corner. As she drove home, Lena thought about the old man's final instruction. Pass it forward. She would. Not just with money, though she'd already started planning donations to organizations that helped vulnerable kids. But with presence, with seeing people the way he'd seen her. With recognizing that everyone has a story, that dignity costs nothing, that kindness is never wasted. $20 million had changed her circumstances, but the real gift had been the reminder that she mattered, that her voice deserved to be heard, that her dreams were worth pursuing. Some people would call it luck, a chance encounter that could have happened to anyone. But Lena knew better. The old man had been testing for something specific. Character in the face of difficulty, kindness despite circumstances, dignity under pressure. And she'd passed without even knowing she was being tested. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Money solved some problems, but created others. People would judge her, question whether she deserved this, make assumptions about who she was and how she'd gotten here. There would be challenges she couldn't anticipate, mistakes she'd inevitably make. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lena felt something that had been absent from her life for years. Hope. Real, solid, tangible hope for a future that could be different from her past. She pulled into her apartment complex for one of the last times. Soon this place would be a memory, another chapter in a long story of survival and resilience. But tonight it was still home, and that was enough. Before going inside, she pulled out her phone one more time, opened a new note, and started typing. Things I want to accomplish. Finish my degree in social work. Create a foundation for foster kids aging out of the system. Help fix the problems at Belmont's restaurants. Never forget what it felt like to be invisible. Always see people the way Mr. Belmont saw me. Pass it forward. She saved the note, locked her phone, and headed inside. The check had been real. The money was in the bank. Her new life was beginning. But the most important thing, the thing that would matter more than any dollar amount, was the choice she made every single day from this point forward. The choice to use this gift well, to honor the trust placed in her, to become someone who lifted others up instead of pushing them down. Victor had torn up a $20 million check because he couldn't imagine someone like Lena deserving it. But Mr. Belmont had written that check because he could see exactly what she deserved and exactly what she'd become. The difference between those two perspectives was the difference between a person trapped by their own small thinking and someone free to change lives. Lena chose freedom. Money changed her situation. Courage changed her life. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that character matters more than circumstances, that one act of recognition can change everything, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about a time someone saw your worth when others didn't, and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments. Because these moments happen more often than we think. We just have to be ready to recognize them. And remember, never judge someone by where they stand today, because you might be standing in their future. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.